Hello, everybody. My name's James, and for the benefit of those listening back to the audio, you're listening to Ask James on regular YouTube live stream where I welcome questions from the YouTube community on anything football related. It's just gone past 12 UK time on Thursday, December the 18th. As per usual, I'll be answering questions in order of submission. I'll cover questions up to 1 p.m. UK time. Got nothing specific to announce at the moment, other than a reminder of the free upgrade for everybody on Patreon this month. Every patron gets bumped up a tier, and even free members get one podcast available a week. Money in Football available around about 3 p.m, featuring plenty of chat on FIFA is available even to free members today. Support the show at www.patreon.com/planetfpl. Other than that, let's get into the questions. Ricardo Martinez says, any interest in Mitoma? Or in Minter for that matter, with Mitoma's availability? It looked lively versus Liverpool. Good fixtures coming, but interest in Minter quickly faded. Yeah, I owned Minter for game weeks 13 and 15. Liked him at Forest in 13. Didn't like him in the home games in 14, 15. And that's where you want to use him most, right? Sunderland, West Ham, Burnley across the next 4, with also a trip to the Emirates. It's not on radar of any interest to me, and neither would Mitoma, having recently come back from injury. So no interest at the moment for me. NT says, hi James, I'm gutted I went Raul Jimenez instead of Wilson as my Fulham attacker. Was that just a mistake and I should go to Bowen before I'm priced out or hold? I think if you went Jimenez, you probably hold him for the next, certainly at least this week. You might want to look at Jared Bowen from next week. I don't think you do anything about that this week. You probably went Jimenez for the 3 weeks, with maybe a thought process of a Bowen or Ekateke would maybe appeal from 18. I think if I'd made that choice personally, I'd be sticking with that this week. Wouldn't define it as a mistake. We spoke about Raul Jimenez quite a bit, particularly for those wildcarding in 16, or obviously others had got plenty of free transfers, all of us. Then he was going to appeal as a third forward option with the 3 fixtures they had. One of the reasons I didn't go there was I thought it would probably turn into Tiano Barry. If you can get back up after this week, I'd probably consider doing that. But I wouldn't define it as a mistake, NC. With Rodrigo Muniz injured, Jimenez minutes looks quite good. He's played a lot of the minutes last night. That should be no concern. I don't play Forest till Monday. So I'd stick for this week, mate. Spooky Sorcerer says, hi James, couldn't follow FPL for a month, so now have 5 free transfers, free hit and wildcard. Which week should I use the 2 chips? If this week, then can you suggest some players? So you've got 3 hit left. You can do that either way, can't you? I mean, I'm probably inclined to say I don't think it's a great week for free hit, because there's other weeks like 19, you can go like treble United, treble Liverpool, some Palace at home to Fulham, Newcastle away to Burnley, and you probably avoid that on wildcard at the moment, largely considering the fixtures those teams have perhaps got this week. I'd probably look at free hit 19. Maybe it depends how well you are or aren't set for this week. So if you think you're set okay, 5 free transfers this week on some players for 1 week punts, then wildcard, then free hit afterwards, maybe. So like if you're set this week, smash into treble Bournemouth, wildcard off it next week, that sort of thing. But yeah, not ideal. There isn't a perfect way, I think, to play that. But if I was set okay, I'd probably go to 5 free transfers now, maybe wildcard 18, free hit 19, or you can do that the other way round. You free hit 18. I think it's 18, 19 is both good for Liverpool. Maybe you look at Sunderland instead. Game week 18, their fixtures aren't great. Otherwise, there's probably wildcard 18, maybe free hit 19, I think, probably. Next up is Spooky Sorcerer says, hi, James. I've just covered you. Sorry, mate. Prashan says, hi, James. Bumo to Semenyo or Cunha. I plan to free hit in 18, or would 19 be better? So 19, in terms of the weeks itself, probably better, but 19 carries you a bit better afterwards. So you can look at that either way, I guess. I've not made that sort of decision myself. I might end up going for either player. I won't go for Cunha now, I don't think. it's either a case for me of leave it. So my player I'd be moving is probably Bruno Guimaraes. It's either just leave it at the moment and maybe move on Voltemade, or do neither. Or I go Semenyo, knowing that that's short term. He's on 4 yellow cards. It's worth remembering. If he got booked this week, it's right. It's Cunha 18. If he doesn't, then it's Cunha 19. That's the sort of thing I'd be thinking at the moment. So might depend in terms of how strong the rest of your team is. You say you plan to free hit 18 or 19. If you free hit 19, do you bother with Cunha? Maybe not. You just carry Semenyo and say, okay, right, it's Arsenal afterwards, but it is still at the vitality. Semenyo I'd see at the moment in terms of buying as something that's probably short term and then maybe come back to again around about game week 24, perhaps. There's a number of teams coming, some good fixtures around about then. And doubles might play a factor. I'll cover that a little bit on the weekender tomorrow. Owen Sinclair says, hi James, I want to go aggressive this week and catch up with people in my mini league. Would you take out Saka for Semenyo this week to get in Ekitike for Thiago next week? Would I take out Saka for Semenyo? So then again, what would be your longer term plan with Semenyo? So my view on Semenyo is kind of, I can go there. Definitely if I own Semenyo rather than Guimaraes this week, and it's probably fair to say that's an upgrade. But obviously buying Saka last week was an upgrade as well. I took the view that I probably only really wanted him for the fixture that was just gone. And that is a circumstance here where I might end up even putting him in this week. Unlikely. Could go Voltemade to Krupi, and then actually I can go Guimaraes up to Saka. But yeah, I'm not convinced that I want to be at that level. Yeah, I'd like to keep the options open for Ekitike or Bowen next week. So I kind of like the idea of doing it just for it to open up the possibility of that. And if you wait a week, then Saka down to what instead? It's probably Cunha. I'm not sure that I'd do it if I was already on Saka. I'd probably leave it, I think, for the moment. Savanch Singh says, hi James, your thoughts on a Minter to Cherky move this week? So I watched the first half of City last night. Very impressive again with him. He kind of gives off this almost laboured look at times, but he's a very, very talented footballer. The goal was outstanding. Beautiful strike. He's, I think, joint most for FPL assists now. And it might be outright overall for just general assists in the league. It feels like Cherky is I don't have O'Reilly, Foden, Haaland, so he's the fourth best choice. And I do think the other three are better choices at the moment. But I certainly take on board, you might be sitting there with one free transfer and you're like, oh my God, I've let all this go with Foden. Or maybe you don't want to get O'Reilly. Then I think Cherky is perfectly reasonable. The idea of going Minter to Cherky, I wouldn't put you off. Personally. I know someone was asking earlier about investing in Minter. For me, a no. If you want to go Cherky, you want to do it now, don't you? So I don't hate it, Savanch, personally. Hasselbank's win says, this Arsenal team are not ready to win a Prem or a UCL. So poor from open play. Attacking options, yes, but are any of them on par with Foden, Cherky, Haaland? Wolves, Chelsea, 10 men, United, opening day. Is there a question, mate? You could flip that the other way and say, I think that Arsenal will lose less football matches than Manchester City because they're still vulnerable. Look at City's defeat at Newcastle as an example of that. The defeats to Brighton and Tottenham earlier this season. Arsenal are much more stable defensively, so pick your narrative. AP UK says, over the coming weeks, who would you say are the priority purchases? Please, could you give me them in your order of preference? VVD, Tarkowski, Bowen, Ekitike. Tarkowski I wouldn't pay for. I think me and Sean have covered that a number of times. I think there's good enough alternatives. You've got Hincapi basically sitting there at the same price till Gabriel's back. I realise that's going to cost you another transfer down the line. Van Dijk, I own. 18, 19, very much want. Not bothered about that. Otherwise, he might get cut for me in 21. I'm kind of looking at Hincapi, to Gabriel whenever that's ready, and probably Van Dijk to Chalobah. Moving forward, kind of keeps me at the same value price in terms of structure there. Those are the sort of things I'm considering. So neither of them defenders, so it would be the attackers. If you're going this week, it's Ekitike over Bowen. That might look slightly different next week just because Bowen's then got the Manchester City fixture out of the way. And it might come down to your risk appetite. Bowen, you know, is going to be good for minutes. Ekitike carries a bit more risk, but those immediate fixtures in 18 and 19 are obviously great. You could still go Ekiteke 18, 19, and then back even for Bowen when he goes to Wolves in 20. It's Forest at home 21. You can come back to that. Tottenham, Sunderland 22, 23 doesn't hold any fears either. So probably Ekiteke, Bowen, VVD, Tarkovsky. Ricardo Martinez says, with the latest injuries, does Newcastle now become a defence to target rather than to seek? I wouldn't say necessarily target. I think it'd be better if having Nick Pope in goal. Not that Aaron Ramsdale is at fault for the goal last night or the goal at Sunderland at the weekend either. He obviously adds a lot distribution-wise, but it was an incident in the second half last night where I noticed Jimenez made a run into the box when Wilson had it on the right half space, and you could see he was going to make the cross. And Malik Chow went so deep with him, like ridiculously deep. And he ended up shielding Jimenez out and the ball went over his head and out for a goal kick and there was no danger. And you can look at that and go, that's good defending. He's gone back in with Jimenez, made sure he couldn't win the header. But he went so deep. Actually, he should just held his ground and played him offside is the even safer thing to do. I think that's a lack of confidence in the goalkeeper coming, I'm afraid to say. So I think Pope back in would help. I think there is a suspicion that Lewis Hall is not injured. And may have just been rested last night. I don't suppose Eddie Howe's going to give you confirmation. The Livramento injury sounds like it might be bad. Obviously, Burn from a leadership and organisational perspective is a bit of a loss, but I wouldn't say Fabian Schär is a huge downgrade in terms of player personnel, and actually is a different weapon for Newcastle because of he's got better passing ability and better range. Lewis Miley played right back last night, did quite fine. I think there's a chance that he might have to play there again. That will be more challenging if he has to play against a Garnacho or a Neto on Saturday lunchtime. So I said a few weeks ago I'd got Malik Chow prior to his haul against Everton, obviously benched him. But I said after that I wouldn't be targeting Newcastle defensively now because of the change of goalkeeper. And you definitely wouldn't be targeting them for investment now. So Chow is he's gonna sit there as my fifth defender at the moment. He's very good for minutes, so that's not an immediate concern for me. Then they have some good fixtures moving forward afterwards where I can use him if I want to, or downgrade or upgrade if I want to. In terms of actually targeting them though, no, I wouldn't buy a Chelsea attacker this week going to St James's Park. I think there's every chance Chelsea might go there and win, but I wouldn't be targeting Newcastle in that way. If I'm going to Cunha in game week 18, it's part with 19, 20, 21 in mind as much as Newcastle and want to be ahead of that. So I don't think there's a specific target Newcastle. You're not going to go and buy Burnley attackers in 19. Those of you who are selling the likes of Mateta are not going to go back in game week 20. You might find that you'll be going back there around about game week 26, but probably maybe not till then. So I don't think you actually target Newcastle. Andrew Barton says, James, do you think it's worth punting on Pino soon when Wilson's games become non-favourable? No, not necessarily. I mean, I recommend yesterday's clash of correspondence. You want a differential to consider maybe from next week. Charlie Alcaraz at Everton could be a consideration. Wilson's pretty good for minutes. I totally get it. You'll get to 19. It's like, oh, I want to look at something different maybe. Well, if Dewsbury Hall's back fit by then, he would maybe be a solution. Maybe something like Mateus Fernandes at West Ham. I think he's picked up DEFCON in the last three and had attacking returns kind of steady-ish. He might be quite under the radar at the moment. Pino, probably no. Probably no. There's also the impact of Palace of, I think tonight is important to understand whether they're going to have that playoff game or not. Obviously, if they beat Arsenal next Tuesday, they've got Carabao Cup semis in January as well. That might even become a bit of a priority throughout that month. So, no, Yeremy Pino would be a no for me at the moment, personally. What do you do as well if you go there and then Sarr's back in mid-January? Do you want to upgrade that? I think it would be a no for me. I think the Kamada injury helps as well from a minutes perspective because he could also play that left 10 position. But no, Yeremy Pino is not on radar for me. I like the player from what I've seen so far. I think he's settled okay. Jock Goat says, hi James, loving the content as always. Have 5 free transfers likely doing Boomer to Semenyo this game week. Would you start VVD or Richards or sell Gordon to Wilson and bench VVD and Richards? Thanks, mate. I personally would probably not be chasing Harry Wilson now, personally. I know it's easy for me to say as I own, but Yeah, you just had 2 double-digit hauls in a row. I don't think this is going to kick on in the way that Phil Foden's had. So I probably wouldn't be chasing that personally. I understand the want to move on Gordon, though. I mean, if you're going Boomer to Semenyo, he's putting you money in the bank. Can Gordon not hold for Cunha? I'd kind of probably rather that. Gordon will start Saturday lunchtime. And actually, these fixtures, if Newcastle get their counter-attack right, are arguably more suitable to him. So I probably wouldn't go Gordon to Wilson. In terms of starting VVD or Richards, that's a close one. Again, we need to see the Palace team tonight, and we'll look at that tomorrow on the weekender. You're asking the wrong guy, mate. I've got Van Dijk, and I do not want to bench him this week. And for those who listened to Tottenham on Patreon yesterday, Tottenham's attacking statistics is a very big reason behind that, actually. So, VVD for me. But I don't think you could look at Richards as a bad asset this week. I'd just go VVD, personally. I think he'd be good for DEFCONs this weekend as well. It's the knowing what it can be. I mean, they're both capable of hauling, but again, you're probably asking the wrong guy because I've got a negative bias towards Tottenham at the moment. AP UK says, do you see Paulinho coming back into the Spurs team soon? If so, when roughly? Can I just skip this? Paulinho is going to get minutes over the Christmas period because Tottenham's game spacing after the Crystal Palace fixture is quite bad. So he doesn't want to play Paulinho and Bentancur together anymore. But after the Palace game, it's then Brentford Thursday, Sunderland Sunday, Bournemouth Wednesday, FA Cup game against Aston Villa on the Saturday. Right, Paulinho clearly is going to start some games over this period. If you were asking that from a fancy perspective, yeah, okay. Andrew Watt says, Merry Christmas, one and all. I hope everyone gets what they want for Christmas to be on the good list. Hit a like and subscribe to Patreon. Well sold, Andrew. Yeah, smash a like, hit the sub button. And if you can support the show on Patreon, www.patreon.com/PlanetFPL. Andrew says, I have Voltamade and I want to move this on. I'm keen on Ekitike, but would need to sell Rice for a cheaper option such as Wilson. Is it worth it? I'm not sure that it is. And also, again, if you get through this week, borrowing a cheaper price and similar, maybe more so to Voltamade, perhaps fits your structure better, should be good for minutes over the Christmas period. I haven't made a decision yet. I won't buy Bowen this week. I might buy Ekitike this week. I might buy Semenyo this week. I might buy Tavernier this week. I might do nothing. I haven't made a decision and won't till all the team news is gone tomorrow. I did a piece yesterday in Midweek Dilemma for our advanced intermediate tier patrons about the next move perhaps being what really influences this current move. And I kind of with Ekitike, I don't like that. I don't know where I stand for the Wolves Leeds games yet. I don't have to get him this week. If I get Semenyo, it forces me to move Dewsbury Hall or Chow down to then put Ekitike in the following week. So I'm kind of in a similar-ish position to you. And I can only tell you honestly that I've not made my decision on it. As said, I probably wouldn't run after Wilson at this stage. What is he, 5.6-ish now? For me, you invested at 5.2. It's like, let's leave that now, 7th or 8th attacker. I'm not sure I'd chase that now. If he has a couple of blanks, you can move that on again, I think. You won't like it. So I don't think I'd chase it. It might just be better off sitting tight at the moment. He's not in great form. He didn't overly impress when he came on as a sub last night. Visser did okay, but I'd be very surprised if Voltamade didn't start Saturday. NT says, hi James, would you play Lacroix or Anderson this week? Lacroix. Yeah, Lacroix for me of the two. The problem with Fulham is they just don't keep many clean sheets, ultimately. So if you ask me now, what do I think Anderson gets in on Monday night? I'm going to say it's 3 or 4 points. Now, Lacroix, if Palace concede, he's less likely to hit the DEFCON. We know that, but also capable. But I'd be chasing the one I think was more capable of the really big haul. I think that's more likely Lacroix. Forest were good. I know my team was bad Sunday, but Forest deserved their flowers for that as well. So favouritism with Lacroix. I know Leeds have improved recently, but I would say Lacroix. Anish says, I have 2 free transfers. Does it make sense to bring in Semenyo for Cunha for the next 1 or 2 game weeks and then go back to Cunha in 19 or 20? I want to have Cunha long term, but also want to target Burnley. I don't think that's worthwhile. Unless you've got an amazing team and you're like, I don't know what to do. But actually, you've got 2 free transfers. Let's make that 3. The build-up of 3 transfers is going to be beneficial for those who can do it. I got a couple of players I want to get rid of. You're talking about selling a player that you know that you want back. I'd leave it be. I'd leave Cunha in. CM Punk says, have some wildcard questions since I might activate on Saturday. Was on wildcard 19, but is no Liverpool and Everton cover in 18 a viable reason to bring it forward by a week? I definitely wouldn't let Everton, with 2 away games. They are nice fixtures, Burnley and Forest. I wouldn't let that impact my decision on wildcard. The Liverpool, I get it, you want for the Wolves game, but do you actually really want treble Liverpool at the moment? What if Szoboszlai gets booked this week? What are you on wildcard? Ekiteke, Van Dijk, and I don't know what the answer to that is. If Szoboszlai is unavailable, you're going to go Isak, you go Curtis Jones, Konate, Alisson. No, I probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't let that influence that. And once you hit 19, then it's like, right, okay, United's back on radar. Newcastle, you can attack better in game week 19. Also, Brighton, maybe for a couple of games after the Arsenal fixture's gone. As usual with this, you can spin your narratives either way, right? So you could say, right, Everton brings it forward for 18. You don't want Brighton. Yeah, but then Brighton got West Ham and Burnley 19-20. So I'd probably hold off, I think, for me, probably. Also says, moving Saka to Neto, Gordon, Rice allows me to do Sanchez and Potts to Pickford and Cherky. With Saka bench will be Mukiele, Potts and Gu fitting in Cunha, Ekiteke. 2 thoughts. My thoughts are you're going to wildcard really soon, mate. Don't bother making a goalkeeper transfer. Just don't bother, mate. Don't bother. Right, okay. Sanchez has got Villa in 18. Pickford's got Burnley. I wouldn't bother, mate. Honestly, you'd be better off rolling, just having that transfer further down the line after your wild card. Cherky, I get, as covered earlier. If you're not on O'Reilly, Foden, Haaland, then he has to be a real consideration for people. I still prefer that other treble up, but I realise for some people that won't work. Delicious Lemon Sauce says, hi, James. What's a stronger bench? So this, I presume, is a bench boost question. Dubravka at Bournemouth, Minter v Sunderland, Chow v Chelsea, or Harry Wilson versus Forest, or in 18, Dubravka v Everton, Thiago and Vandenberg v Bournemouth, Van Heck at Arsenal. I mean, if Thiago's fit, quite why you'd be benching that at home to a Bournemouth team that's conceded the joint most goals away from home, I'm really not sure, mate. So I'm not convinced that that's your worst 4. If it is, then by default, just having Thiago as part of that bench probably clinches it for that one. Otherwise, I'd probably prefer 17. Eddie Joe Robinson says, hey James, 4 free transfers with 0.7 in the bank on wildcard 19. So looking at players for the next 2, thinking Anderson to Tavernier or Wilson. Was leaning Tav as Wilson played 90 last night. Do you have a preference? Cheers. Similarly, I definitely wouldn't allow Wilson playing 90 minutes to impact. You don't play till Monday. So I think it was an awkwardness for Newcastle last night in that for Fulham, Newcastle obviously had a schedule of Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, and Fulham had a schedule of Saturday, Wednesday, Monday, right? So it allowed Fulham to go really strong with their lineup last night. So I definitely wouldn't let the 90 last night factor in. They don't play for 5 days, mate. What I would say with Tavernier is, so I've said with Wilson, I probably wouldn't chase it at this point, but I know that if I go a Tavernier route, he's possibly going to end up as my 8th attacker, and I'm not sure I want him long term either. Probably the choice of that, if you're looking longer term, probably is still Wilson, I think, between the 2. Mike Parsons says, hi James, on my last 3 transfer, is Chow to O'Reilly a sound move? Have Van Dijk, Timber, Richards and Esteve as my defence. Would it be strong enough to play a 2-5-1? A 2-5-1? How many players do you want to go short here, mate? I don't know if you meant to press 3-5-2 on that and I've just hit the wrong keys, I'm going to guess. You don't want to be playing this Dev every week, mate. Definitely not. I don't think. It's ideal cover as a bench player for when a player misses out. You don't want to be starting it everywhere. I'm assuming that's what you meant. But Chelsea O'Reilly, yeah, absolutely fine. Timing's good. Wouldn't be put off by the fact he started last night. He got subbed relatively early, along with Gonzalez and Cherky, and kind of the three that started last night. You would think would start on Saturday. So yeah, I'm fine with that move, mate. Harry B says, yes, James, currently starting Minter this week, but feel it's a blank waiting to happen after his recent home performances. Would you consider selling to Tavernier to target the Burnley game? Cheers. No, actually, under this circumstance, I would stick with Minter, actually. It depends on what your rotation is for 18 and so, but think of it logically like this. You target Burnley, right? Okay, fine. So you go Tavernier, and then he's better in 18 than Minter, Brentford away rather than Arsenal away. Right, then you look at Tavernier playing Chelsea-Arsenal, and you look at, who's good and similar value for 19 and 20, and your choices are probably Everton or Brighton. I'd stick with Minter under that circumstance. Jacob Besant says, hi mate, really struggling for Enzo replacement. I have Saka, Foden and Bruno, I presume Fernandes. Wilson feels like points chasing only 2 good fixtures. Plan was Dewsbury Hall, not sure where to go now. So advice on that would probably be don't run from it. You've got a player there, should be good for minutes largely over the Christmas period. Their fixtures aren't great, but if you don't know where you want to go, I wouldn't necessarily move on, right? He's very capable. I actually think there's a chance he plays in the 10 role in that fixture. In these sort of games, Maresca does like to play James and Caicedo together if he can. So I wouldn't be surprised if Enzo played as a 10. Therefore, I'd probably leave it be. Options would then open up a little bit better, I would say, for next week. And that could even include a bit more information on Dewsbury Hall. Like I listened to COTC yesterday, Sean makes some really good points about Alcaraz. If Dewsbury Hall's out for a while, he'll be a consideration for me. Not this week, but maybe next week. So you can even have a look at it this weekend, see his positioning. If he looks half decent against Arsenal, that's going to bode well for the fixtures afterwards. Eddie Joe Robinson says, also start VVD or VDV this week. Serious question. Yeah, said whilst crying. Yeah, VVD, mate. Jacob Besant, currently playing back 5. VVD, Timber, Hincapi, Richards, Senesi. Convince me I'm a madman, please. Nope. I think all of them perfectly reasonable for this week, mate. None of them on paper looks like a bad asset this week, so it's absolutely fine. Definitely not a madman. Mike Parsons saying 4-5-1 in relation to the question, so I presume that was going to be benching this Dev most weeks. I don't like that set of 4-5-1, personally. I'm not a fan of it. If suddenly like Ekateke's Bowen develops, it becomes real hard work to put them in. And imagine if something like an Isak explodes or a Watkins, like it gets really difficult. Jock Goat says Forest have been the second best defence away from home. Expected goals conceded wise since Dyche arrived. Played Bournemouth, Everton, Liverpool and Wolves. Think Wilson is worth a punt or just roll and reassess next week? I'm kind of covered for others. Depends on your circumstance. Jacob Kennedy says, what do you think Alex Scott's minutes will look like moving forward? Should look pretty good. I think he's 5, I want to say, Alex Scott. Not going to get you a lot. There is the potential that he ends up screening quite a bit with Tyler Adams out, which Adams is decent for DEFCONs. We don't quite know the prognosis yet of Tyler Adams, but it's probably assumed that he's going to miss at least the Christmas period following and the New Year period following the draw at Manchester United on Monday. So it's not one I'd be looking at for fantasy at the moment. But the answer to your question, Jacob, his minutes should, look pretty good. Jacob Besant says, what's your thoughts on Thiago Bowen Saturday night before the price rise? I can't warrant paying more than 7.5 for him. So I don't know if there's a bit of a... He's obviously flagged at the moment, Thiago. Person opinion on that, a little bit like maybe the kind of the thought process with Lewis Hall was that they've got really busy schedule coming up and Keith Andrews wanted to leave him out last night, and for the sake of those travelling, etc., it was easy to say, well, he's got a bit of a knock. Okay, I imagine he's probably all right. After this week, which is a trip to Wolves, Brentford have Bournemouth at home, just said, joint most conceded goals away from home. Then Tottenham at home. Everton away, Sunderland at home. Like, it's all right. It's definitely at least all right for the next couple. The only way I'd be selling Thiago in the immediate, and I realise I have value in him, but if I felt he was shit and I want to get something else, I'll sell him. They're fourth on my ticker over the next 5 game weeks. I really have no intention of moving Igor Thiago on if he's fit in the immediate. Now, once I get into 21 period and stuff, and Chelsea have a good turn of fixtures and a few others, ironically, I've said this a few times, Mateta might come back on the radar. Fine. Maybe Arsenal get consistency at their 9. I'll look at something else. But it won't be Thiago going for me unless he's injured. I'm fairly certain of that. Bournemouth at home, mate. It's a great fixture. It's a great fixture. Next up is OG FPL. Hi, James. What are your thoughts on Man United and where they'll finish this season? Won't cover too much because me and Clayton did pretty much 20-25 minutes on the Monday Night Football on Tuesday's podcast. But really impressed me at the start of the game. I do think they're getting better. I think the pressing structure and fluidity, so that's off and on the ball stuff, is definitely getting better in my eyes. They still massively lack quality in certain individual areas. Truthfully, with no European football, no Carabao Cup football, Manchester United, for me, really should be pushing for 5th. They really should be pushing for it. And I think to finish lower than 6th, in my eyes, would be really, really disappointing. I recognise 6th, 7th in terms of that's probably a Europa League place. Probably wouldn't make a huge amount of difference. But United really have got an advantage over everybody else in and around them. Bar what? Brighton and Sunderland. United really have an opportunity here, and they should. I think they're going to find this period difficult with no Bumo Diallo, clearly. They should, as long as they avoid injuries to key players, they really should be pushing for 5th. And I've been consistent saying that for a number of weeks, in fact months, that I thought that it was every chance United would finish 5th. Now, there's a few things that make that more difficult. One, there's 3 teams definitely better than them in Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City. If Liverpool can rediscover Liverpool last season, Liverpool would overtake Manchester United. And obviously, Villa are absolutely flying. And I think actually team v team, Villa is stronger at the moment. But Villa will have their own complications in terms of their involvement in the Europa League. And there's every chance they'll go all the way in that competition. So yeah, United should push for 5th. Tommy G Comedy says, hi James, best value defender for the next 6 game weeks. Considering Collins, Vandenberg, Richards, Canate. I have 2 mids on 4 yellow cards, but no Palace or Liverpool. Thoughts? Thanks. Yeah, it's a shame. Michael Keane would probably be my answer beyond this week, but we do know that Jared Brantwaite's getting quite close, so I probably wouldn't chase that. Although Brentford have good fixtures, and what I've just said about Thiago, I don't think I'd want to run into them defensively on what I've seen recently. Definitely wouldn't run to West Ham. Palace is stable and consistent. There's every chance they might end up with a double in the March period. The first thing that needs, by the way, is for them to go finish top 8 tonight, which probably requires them to win with a reserve team. If that then happens, and trust me, it will look good for them over that period under that circumstance. Do you want Richards as one of your 3? I'm really beginning to think about these sort of things. Joachim Anderson's tidy in the immediate. I still think Alderete, Sunderland come back around some good fixtures. 4.0, played the majority of the games. If you're happy that Chris Richards could be a long-term Crystal Palace option for you, fine. I think there's a few others that'd be worth paying a little bit more for, personally. But if you don't, then Chris Richards, yes, would be the best choice. But by consideration of considering other Palace players when it's maybe more important further down the line, truthfully at this moment, I'd probably just go down to something like Alderete. Taylor says, 5 free transfers and no glaring issues. Congratulations. Thoughts on Van Dijk to Senesi? Plan next week was to move Van Dijk to Canate to free up funds. It just comes down to Senesi outscoring Van Dijk by 4. I wouldn't have confidence in that, personally. And I understand what you're saying about bringing Canate in. But I'd probably rather that you just had both for 18 and 19. You're going to be so... If you sell Van Dijk and he hauls in 18, 19, you're going to be so gutted. I wouldn't be selling him. LP says, weighing up bench boosts in 17 or 19. Game week 17 bench would be Dubravka, Rice, VVD, or Dubravka, Rice or VVD. Chow, Potts. Game week 19 likely the same, but with a Tavernier replacement, 6.5 or less instead of Chow. Which is preferable in your opinion? It's now. And the reason it's now is, yeah, fixtures are going to look better in 19. But the majority of the league has a 3-day turnaround in game week 19. I'd be very conscious of that. In terms of the players you've got there, though, Malik Chow will be good for minutes. Dan Burn injured, etc. So that's okay. But what you got to think about is the whole rest of your team. So if someone else, and it's particularly as Manchester City, is the danger. Because you know if a City player gets left out, they might not even get on the pitch. Then your bench player goes into your 11. So if I took Chow away to Burnley out of that, you're like, shit, what is this now? So reluctantly, it's probably just go now. That's not ideal. Potts could pick up a DEFCON Man City, but to be honest, players generally don't against Manchester City. Wouldn't fancy Chow for a clean sheet this week. Fixture-wise, 19 is better, but there's way more risk with it. I will leave that with a play it your way to conclude. Andrew Sands says, afternoon from wet Edinburgh. It's absolutely battering it down here today, and that wasn't actually predicted. Final wildcard 17 dilemma. Both are second forwards and fifth midfielders for at least 4 to 5 game weeks. Ekiteke and Somerville, or Welbeck and Rice, got all the other usual suspects. I don't think I like either. Ekiteke, Rice, fine. Welbeck, you're going to find, I think, doesn't start one of the West Ham or the Burnley games in 19 or 20. Somerville, I like as a player. It's nothing more than punty at the moment, though. I think my answer would be at this moment in time, Ekiteke plus a different player, actually. And I'd chance maybe even something like an Alcaraz, maybe. If you've got a strong feeling for Somerville, okay. He's a player that I considered a number of weeks ago, but it has not looked like equating to FPL stuff at this moment. Paul Flanagan says, hi James, greetings from Lincoln. Hello mate, hope you're well. Hope everyone in Lincoln's well. Mike Parsons says, hi James, on my last 3 transfers, Chow to O'Reilly a sound move. I'm fairly certain I already covered that, Mike. Thank you. Lee Sherwood says, hey mate, would you consider Mount as an 8th attacker? Specifically this week for bench boost. Longer term, he can be hidden downgraded, but if he gets minged during AFCON, there's the tasty run from 19. So yeah, is it hidden? I mean, yeah, perfectly reasonable for a bench boost this way. He's a certain starter, mate. There's no doubt about it, which is a nice position to be in with him. So yeah, he's on radar for me. Probably not somewhere I'll get to. And he's better than an 8th attacker. Greg FPL says, hi James, could you predict the top 5 teams for clean sheets by the end of the season? Arsenal, City, Palace, Chelsea. Feel like standout 4. 5th one. Probably Liverpool. Probably. It's Villa. One of them, maybe. Wouldn't be that surprised if it ended up being something like a Sunderland. Possibly. But I think there's the 4 standouts, though. PTY says, Bazball or Ange Ball? I've not been watching the cricket, mate, so I'm going to say Bazball. Love you, Ange. Lamichi says, hi, James. Which 2 start out of Raul Jimenez, Anderson, Richards, Bruno, Guimaraes? If I have Raul Jimenez, I'm starting that this week, despite what I said about Forest. Guimaraes home game. So then Anderson is a confliction to Raul Jimenez. I'd probably go Jimenez, Richards, I think. Kasim says, hi James, who to bench out of Timber, Calafiori, Gay and Van Dijk? My attackers face West Ham, Burnley, Everton, Leeds and Wolves. Reluctantly Van Dijk, mate. Johan Montin says, hope you're well, James. What are your thoughts on Sade or Cherky as a Dango replacement? Kevin Sade, bitch. I don't actually hate that as a differential pump, which is part why I went there wild card. Him being suspended for last week kind of destroyed that for me. So I don't hate it. He really could have got Kusanov sent off last night. Played a more central role though in Thiago's absence. He would, if Thiago was injured, he would look like a very promising asset because there's every chance he'll play as the 9. And it's actually something that if Keith Andrews would say, yeah, Thiago's in big trouble here, it's something that I might even react to myself, possibly. Otherwise, I probably no. Max King says, is Bruno G, Rice and Thiago worth a -4 for Semenyo, Tavernier and Ekiteke this week? No. We're going to take a -4 out to sell a talisman who has the worst team in the league away. And as per what I covered on Monday's podcast, Wolves away might now be a better fixture than Wolves at home. I mean, that in itself, just absolute no from me, mate. Taylor says, who do you prefer as a 1-week punt, Tavernier or Rodgers? Tavernier. Burnley at home versus Rodgers off the left against a new right-hand side for United. Who's expected to replace Boomer and Ahmad in the 11? So Manu might play. And Manu might even be as the right-sided 10. And might even offer quite a bit of support down that side. Narratives. Xerxes an option, Sesko's an option, obviously Casemiro's suspended, Ugate's an option as well. Manu could obviously play as a central midfield player. We're not quite sure where we're at on Matthias de Ligt at the moment. Morgan Rodgers, rather than the left, needs to be able to get into the central zones to be damaging. Just look at the 2 goals against West Ham. They both from various distances end up between the posts. So I wouldn't focus on that too much. Now, United can definitely be hurting that central area without Casemiro available. 1-week punt. I mean, I'll assume you've got Treble City. Yeah, Tavernier for me on that. Rewind says, James, you're a legend, mate. Cheers, pal. Stuart Webb says, hi, James. Have the exact money for Munoz and Dango to O'Reilly and Cunha. Using 2 of 4 free transfers. Only downside is it blocks Bowen next week. O'Reilly and no Bowen, or Keane Richards and get Bowen next week. As someone who owned Jared Bowen for the first 12 game weeks of the season, can't say that I'm desperate to go back. That said, I also acknowledge the streaky nature of his very good performances towards the end of last season and acknowledge he scored 2 in a row and he might be in a bit of form. And if he scores at Manchester City this weekend, it'll create a lot of interest. So he's not out the running for me in terms of my thinking, and it's great for the Christmas period because you know you're going to get close to 360 minutes from him unless he gets injured. Exact money from Munoz and Dango to O'Reilly and Cunha. For me, that element of it in terms of moving forward is possibly more important than the Jared Bowen. Because if you use 2 of 4 free transfers, there will be other ways for you to get the Jared Bowen. You've mentioned players like Keane, Richards here, right? Well, that stuff can become Alderete and maybe that becomes Bowen. That's my take. D-Dot says, hi James, 1 free transfer and I don't own Semenyo. Would you swap him for Bruno G or leave it? I won't be holding Semenyo for longer than 2 weeks. Alternatively, I could do Elliot Anderson for Tavernier. I presume you mean Tavernier in for Elliot Anderson. Just remember with Anderson, like I know, because there's a number of midfielders who started producing regular attacking returns, it means we've forgot DEFCON in that area. Like Anderson is so far and away for ball recoveries. Just on that alone, he is regularly going to pick up little bits. I can't really answer this D-Dot because I could give you one answer in terms of my instinct now and I might end up doing the exact opposite because that's where I'm at and I've not made my decision yet. So I'd only be estimating. I feel like the right thing for me to say to you is do it. But I don't know what your alternatives are. And also for me, yes, it would be short-term Semenyo. I've not decided. Let's put it this way. I'm not convinced. Ethan Justin says, hello, James. Merry Christmas, mate. And to you too, and to all our viewers and listeners. Best Everton asset for their upcoming good run. Also, is Ekitike worth ripping your team up for, as can't get to him easy? Thanks. Ripping team up, probably not. No. This is the part where it's amazing that obviously a lot of teams will be on like a Haaland, Thiago, and Krupi Goo as an example. Now looking like Ekitike, Bowen's like... And yet I'm sitting here now considering down in Voltemade to like Krupi and now putting 5 in midfield is quite interesting. No, I don't think it probably doesn't want ripping up. Best Everton asset is dependent on the Dewsbury Hall news, because if Dewsbury Hall's back in even 2-3 weeks, it's still Dewsbury Hall. Grealish, I don't think would be worth it. If Dewsbury out is long term, I mean this honestly, the answer might be what Sean said, Alcaraz. Shani Razzle says, Big James, massive love to you, you absolute legend. Usual request, noggin rub to bring us good luck from the FPL gods. And please shout out Bozzy as part of the Bald Gang. Bozzy, shout out from the Bald Gang, mate. Dave Hannigan says, hit a like, guys. Show that Christmas spirit. Thank you, FPL Trini says, do you think 4-5-1 with Krupi and Goon makes sense? No. So, like, this is it, right? You can go 4-5-1 and you honestly could be sitting here this time next week going, oh my God, I want Bowen and Ekitike. That's a possibility. Right. This then becomes brutal. So no, the 2 up front setup is fine. I don't like the 4-5-1 now. Shani Razzle says, Owen, remember to drop a like, you freeloaders. Loaders, exercise those thumbs. Thank you. Akash Demoraran says, with Doku injured and Savinho performing well against Brentford, do we think he has an outside chance of getting a run of starts? I think you've answered your own question there, mate. Outside chance, yeah. I think so at this moment. Yeah. I think it's probably the player that benefits most, I think, from Doku's injury in terms of minutes over the winter period. He's probably Rangers. Drac Lorien says, hi, James. Think Thiago is fine. If not, who would you move to? Ekiteke or Bowen, someone else? Yeah, I'm not even going to think about this till Keith Andrews tells me he's injured. And I think I've covered this already. That I don't have any intel, by the way. Rhino says, hi, James. Need to transfer Doku out. Have 1 million in the bank. Who would you go for? Already own Foden, Saka, Bruno, Josh King, Cunha. Yeah, just go early. If your team's in a luxury position to take a punt on Semenyo or something like that, by all means, fine. But if not, and I think with a Josh King, you got an 8th attacker there that's looking dicey for minutes at the moment. Straight to Cunha. Save your transfer, cover you better moving forward. That's the play I'd take. Eddie S says, hi, mate. Do you think Cunha or Bowen scores more over the coming weeks, not including this week? Which would you rather have? Probably Cunha, because in a weird way, I still feel like Ekiteke is a great alternative to Bowen. Whereas when I look at Cunha in a couple of weeks, I'm thinking, yeah, that really probably is the one that I want, because it might have been, since like Ekiteke versus Bowen, it might have been like Cunha versus Gakpo. That doesn't feel like it's there at the moment for me. So I'm gonna say Cunha. Probably buys Bowen next week and ignores Cunha. You know how this game works. Chewy FPL says, hi, James, best and dire replacement in your opinion? Without knowing what you've got, like if you're not on the Treble City Cherky, I think finding it for Cunha moving forward, good. Semenyo, if you can get up there. I think Tavernier, short term. Longer term, it might be all the way down is the answer. Possibly. There's nothing in the Palace midfield I'd want at the moment. It feels a little bit of a shame. Similar with West Ham. Sade's punty, I don't love it. Szoboszlai, but the 4 yellows. Honestly, it won't take much for Dewsbury Hall to be injured for quite a bit and Alcaraz to score and him suddenly be on people's radar. I don't hate it, but it's a shit week to buy. This is a next week conversation in most cases, I think. Eddie S says also, would you start Wilson or Szoboszlai this week, buddy? Szoboszlai. Yeah. You've seen Tottenham concede any goals from the edge of the area recently. And Szoboszlai is near enough the best pure ball striker in the league in terms of his kind of arrow-like technique. Yeah, Szoboszlai, mate. Genuinely. D. Dot says, I asked you last week how Munoz will affect Palace. Now they've lost Kamada. How much worse are they now they've lost both players? Can they still be trusted as a solid defensive unit? Yep. Yep, they can. The Klein issue for Munoz is more of a problem offensively than defensively. And I would suggest similar with Kamada. So Kamada's, I would say, of the 4 players that can play central midfield for Palace, so Wharton, Lerma, Hughes, and Kamada, and there are others who can play in there. Devaney, you could drop deeper. There are other things they can do. Decore's long-term injury. Of those 4, Kamada's the freest spirit. So if Kamada plays, he joins in quicker more often. As a consequence, if it's Lerma, I think he's probably the more orthodox holding midfielder, if you will, from those 4. Hughes has more similar qualities to Wharton. They're basically players that play either side of the penalty area, basically. So I don't think either makes Palace significantly worse defensively. It's more a blow going the other way, I would say. Shivram says, bench one of VVD or Anderson or Rice, Bruno, Guimaraes. Probably Bruno Guimaraes of that. So my order would probably be Rice, VVD, Anderson, Bruno, Guimaraes. Notorious News says, keep Enzo for this game versus an injury hit Newcastle or switch to Bournemouth for Fulham mid. No, I'd probably hold at the moment. There's 2 home fixtures afterwards, which includes 2 teams that can end up quite open. Villa are one of them. Because Villa will go to Chelsea and try and beat them. And Bournemouth, I mean, the away goal stuff is silly, actually. So I think it's fine. Yeah, if you don't know where you want to go, I'd stick with a player like that. Steve says, hi James, I'm on Bench Boost Game Week 18, have 11.4 million to buy a midfielder and a striker to replace Minter and Go. Any thoughts on best combo, as may need one of them for the odd week afterwards? 11.4. So Bowen leaves you nothing. Okay. I mean, if you don't have Thiago, it's still my answer. But actually, if you Thiago's probably too much now, isn't he? What's Thiago, 7'2", is he? If you're not on, you need the right forward here, don't you, to make that work? Okay. Yeah, it's thin on the ground. Jimenez is still an option now. Rogue One is in Ketcher as another option. Doesn't look too bad. Go in Ketcher, what's he, 5'4"-ish or so, I think. That leaves you 7 million or so to go. Kevin Sade for Wolves away and Bournemouth at home. At least with Sade, you know that Sade carries you fine afterwards and you move that on to something else maybe. There you go. Consider that. Sade and Ketcher. That's not the answer I thought I'd give when I read that question. Daro Sot says, hi James, no VVD and I can afford only O'Reilly in for Chow this week. Defenders Timber, Anderson, Bench, Rodon, Istev. Yeah, buying O'Reilly is fine. It is 1 o'clock. I can see 3 more on my screen I'm going to cover off. El Azor says, is Wilson worth bringing in over Rice for a 2-week punt? Nah, I have Saka playing on wildcard 90. If you got Declan Rice, leave it be, mate. Then returns turn up any point. Maru says, hey James, I have already Evan Nilsson in my team. Should I sell Marino to buy Semenyo or Rogers with a -4? San Marino's a bit of an awkward one. Because ultimately the answer here is, well, if he plays, then no. If he doesn't, then yes. Does Marino start for Arsenal or Everton? It's probably a no, isn't it? So I'm kind of inclined to say yes, actually. Last one, class of 23. Would you switch back and forth between Szoboszlai to Semenyo to catch Burnley, then Wolves for Szoboszlai? No, bother. Listen to what I just said about Liverpool playing Tottenham. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. For those who have not got to in terms of your questions, I see there's a number of you. Thank you for contributing to the chat. please feel free to drop me a tag at Planet FPL Pod on Twitter/X or Blue Sky, and I'll happily answer that question for you a little later today. For those watching along, please smash a like, hit the sub button. For audio listeners, goes a 5-star review goes a really long way. If you can support the show, it's www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. Weekender tomorrow with myself and David, including a wrap of the Carabao Cup fallout. We'll have a little look at the potential for doubles in brief for further down the season. We'll also have a look at Leeds versus Crystal Palace, a bit of a preview tomorrow following Crystal Palace game tonight. We'll do some free hits and wildcard drafts amongst some other stuff on that podcast tomorrow. But otherwise, just leaves me to say thanks very much again, everyone. Cue music, please, man child.